Hi, my name is Dibs, and this is Lucky 7 Studios. I've gotten some questions lately about my template, and I thought maybe I could share some of the things that I've come up with the rest of you. You know, there's a lot of template videos out there on YouTube, and so, some of them are great, some of them are not so great, but I think there's something to be learned from anybody's workflow. Seeing how somebody else gets from point A to point B is always fascinating. So, hey, this is how I do it. It might not be how you do it, but I like it. This template really works for me. You'll notice that I borrowed from some of the template resources out there. Some of them are the big mixers, and some of them are just little YouTubers, and they all have something to teach. So I'm pretty open-minded about this stuff, but I think I've found a groove that I really like. This works for me in Pro Tools. I use Pro Tools. This will probably work in just about any DAW, but your mileage may vary. I'll do another video about how this template interacts with the surface, but for now, let's just go through the template. I also want to note that I do use HDX. There's a lot of debate these days about whether or not HDX is something you need, with the computers being as powerful as they are. I like using HDX, and here's why. Even with my 12-core trash can, I find that my computer chokes down a little bit if I'm doing all of my routing, all my mixing, and plugins all on the processor. Just moving the mixer from the computer processor over to HDX makes my system basically unlimited. It absolutely freed me up the minute I plugged that HDX card in. So I can't recommend it enough. However, you can do this without an HDX card, depending on your setup. There's a lot of routing in here. What a template does is it speeds up your workflow. Yes, it does impart a certain sound depending on what plugins you're using or what plugins you have in that template, or what workflows you set up along the way. But it also helps you save time in routing the finished product out to the world. That's what the key to my template is. It's more about where the signal goes after the mix. Very important. Now, again, like I mentioned, there's a lot of templates out there. There's a lot of template videos out there. People out there selling templates. Oh my God, please don't pay for someone else's template. A, it's not going to help you. B, you're just getting scammed. I mean, it's a scam. Building your own template forces you to sit down and think about all of your routing, all of your signal flow. Where does it come in? How does it come out? Where does it go? What's it going through? What does it sound like? If you download some famous mixer's template and plug your song into it, you're not going to sound like that famous mixer. I guarantee you will not. But you might learn something about how that mixer works. One of the last questions that people ask a lot when we're talking about templates is, do you import a song into your template, or do you import your template into a song? I like to import a song into my template because my buses then are all exactly where they need to be, and all of the buses line up just underneath that. To me, visually, it makes more sense for me. You don't have to worry about whether or not one thing imported right or one. It's always in the same thing. Obviously, you have to match your sample rates. And yeah, so without further ado, let's take a look. Here it is, just top level. The layout is not all that unusual. These are all folders. They're all routing folders, which means that they have contents and you can put things in them. And it will always look like this. Even when the template is populated with a song, it can always look as simple as this. Drums, perk, bass, acoustic, electric. There you go. All color-coded, ready to go. The color code isn't important. Do whatever works for you. I like my drums to be blue. I like it to be the default Pro Tools blue because there's usually more drum tracks than anything else. And that's less color coding I have to do if they come in as the default color. For me, purple means bass. And so that's just how I do it. Vocals being important, bright red. That's just me. You do whatever you want. I think that color coding is very important, though. And I would then, as I am populating these folders with tracks from the song, I will be color coding them accordingly to this. So these are subgroups, obviously, submixes of each of these categories, which then flow into a master, because this mix bus comes in and then out to dash mix. And there's a rear bus. We can go into that a little bit later. I'll do a separate video about the rear bus, but it's standard what everybody else is doing. It's everything but the drums usually, sometimes the bass, sometimes not the bass, but that's being routed here with a separate kind of process that's being added in parallel. And then I have my monitor folder. I have separate monitor channels going out for each set of speakers that I have that are each being tuned different ways. We'll get into that. That's a separate video as well, but I'll brush through that. I label all of my buses and all of my outputs and inputs. I will show you my I/O setup a little bit later, but for now, just, it's very important to me that things be labeled properly. I don't want to have to think about, is bus 15 and 16 for the drums or is it for the bass? And, label it. It's that simple. So you'll see my buses here are labeled the same as the track. And so when you open one of these folders, let's do the acoustic guitar folder, you'll see that there is some parallel tracks here. And I have this little paragraph symbol next to that. That always, I can look at it quickly and say, oh, that's a parallel track. Parallel tracks are also always black. These parallel tracks are being routed into the master for that section. A lot of times, so if I dropped 2 acoustic guitars in here, I would route them to acoustic, but I would also route them to this. So you can use sends, or you can double bus things. So for example, let's pretend this is an acoustic guitar track. Okay, so its output is being bussed to the acoustic. I can then hold down the control button and also bus it to the parallels. Now, why do I do it this way rather than doing it with a send? Because this way I don't have to see it. I don't have to think about it. I know it's always going there. I don't have to worry about what level it is, if it's pre or post fader. It is just always going there. I found when I was using sends to send to parallel tracks, the idea is that, I can still trim the mix or I can change things. What I found was if I need to trim something in a parallel process differently than how it's being mixed to the rest of the mix, something's wrong with my gain staging and I have to rethink it anyway. So doing it this way simplifies it in my mind, and I just know it's always going there. If I want to take it out, I can take it out. But here we go. So that's how I do that. In this particular situation, I have an acoustic crush, which I'm using the AR1. I like that on acoustic guitars. I'm also using this as kind of a distortion track. This is a filtered distortion plugin. I love this thing. Once you start digging into it and using it, it becomes part of a lot of my parallel processes. I'm using the acoustic guitar as an example because all of these are pretty much the same. They're very similar. They all have the different parallel processes built in, but they also have a effects folder. And in that effects folder, I have a few preset effects. They're turned off until I need them, but they're here whenever I need them. And the buses are already kind of set up. So if I were to go here and look here, I can go down to acoustic effects 1. Notice there's dividers. I'll go through that later. The reason I do it this way is so that each category has their own reverbs, their own effects that are bussed out of their own outputs. Why do I do that? Why do I not want to have my drum reverbs on my acoustic guitars? Well, for stems. Stems are an important part of the mixing process if you work in television or pretty much anywhere these days. So the outputs of these individual folders go to various places. Now, it says here sum 3. That is my external summing for out-of-the-box mixing. I don't always use that because simultaneously I'm mixing in the box. If I look here, mix bus, rear bus. So it's going to both of these. This is an in-the-box mix as well as an out-of-the-box mix. It's also going to stem acoustic and instrumental. So this one folder is being routed to 4 different places at once. You'll see why in a minute. You'll notice if you look at any of these, they're all doing the exact same thing. So bass is going to rear bus, but also going to stem bass and instrumental. Obviously, the vocals are not going to instrumental. The vocals are going to a cappella. And the beauty of this is when I go to bounce a mix, which I do with the bounce command, not to a track. So if I go to bounce something, I can say, okay, it's automatically going to come up with my mix right here as the first bounce. But I need to do a full set of stems, an acapella and an instrumental. I can go boom, 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 acapella, instrumental. Now, I have all of these stems that are going to be outputted at the exact same time when I bounce. Let's say this song doesn't have synths in it, so we'll just take that out. It doesn't have strings, so we'll take that out. And we don't need a miscellaneous, and so that will come out. So then now I've got a full set of stems ready to go. Now, obviously these stems are not going through my master process, and that's okay, because what these are being used for is rebuilding the mix for television, for movies, for remixes, and they're going to be going through a master process down the line. I'd rather them only go through one master process than both. Yes, mine is better, but I have to trust that the engineer down the line is going to piece this together and hear it. My master bus is not doing that drastic a thing to it that it's going to make it sound that much different. And with all the processing that's going on in those situations anyway, I'd rather it be the least processed as possible. Will it sound exactly the same? No, but it never will. Even if I were doing these stems one at a time, the compressors hit differently when the other things aren't playing, so it never sounds exactly the same. So this is as close as I'm going to get, and it's convenient. So there we go. So I mentioned that I'm simultaneously mixing in the box and out of the box. So yes, everything is going to different sum buses that are being summed, going through a pair of preamps, coming back in. They come back in on 1 and 2, but the digital mix is coming in on this mix bus. So if I switch it to this, I'm now getting the exact same mix through the mix bus. It's that simple. I can switch between in the box and out of the box just that easily. So if I want to route through my in the box mix bus, done. My rear bus is going to both as well. So it's going out to sum 6, but it's also going back into the mix bus. Now my monitors, I mentioned before that I have multiple monitor tracks. So basically that same mix that we're taking for that bounce dash mix is now also being fed to my monitors. This is a routing folder as well. This is being routed out to anything that is not being tuned for a room. So it's going to my headphones, it's going to my little Studer speaker, my little mono reference speaker, and it goes, I have set up so if I want to go to tape or something like that, those are all going out that way. But it's also coming through this. My focals are being tuned by Sound ID reference, and my NS10s are being tuned for Sound ID reference. Why do I tune my NS10s? What's the point of having NS10s if they don't sound like NS10s? Well, that's another show. There's a couple different things that can go on my master fader. I do have external processes. I have like some out-of-the-box compressors that often wind up on there, but you'll notice I have a black box is usually like the first thing in while I'm mixing. Again, it's setting up ceilings. That's, the next ceiling in the line that I like mixing into it. The harder you push it, the more you feel it. Sometimes it's too much. You pull it back a little bit. I love the way that sounds. It's super musical. It's super awesome. And then I have various different plugins that change all the time. These plugins change all the time. The one thing that is always on my output is this guy, the SPL Hawkeye. This is my meter of choice. I usually have it up on a second monitor so I can always see it. Turn off the target and just let it go. One thing I also wanted you to notice is that the master folder is also a folder. What's in that folder? Well, all of my trims. I have a master trim, a rear trim, an instrumental trim, and an acapella trim. Those I don't almost ever touch, but they're there in case I happen to be hitting things a little too hard. If I'm hitting my summing bus too hard, I have these to control the outputs. And I can just bring them up just to where it starts to distort and then back it off a little bit. So that shows you all of the basic channels. The one that's different is the drums. The drums are a little more complicated. Real quick, I have 2 parallel processes for the overall drum kit. And then this is the output of the overall drum kit. Within that, I have 2 more folders. One for kick and snare and one for the rest of the kit. I have within that 2 parallel processes. These plugins are not the same plugins. I don't use the same plugins every time. I have kind of defaults. If it sounds cool, I leave it. If it doesn't sound cool, I change it. I try to default to using less rather than more, but everything's at my fingertips when I need it. That's the point of a template. So if I drop my kicks and snares into this folder, I have a crush, I have a distort, I have some plugins on this submaster that, may or may not get used. But for a while, I had the kick and snare as 2 separate processes that had different parallel tracks on them. I found that by putting them together, it glues them together better, makes them part of the same kit. I felt like I was having a problem where my kick was punchy and clean and my snare was fat and squashed and gritty. And I felt like they weren't in the same world. And by processing them together, I feel like I'm able to get them into the same kind of universe. It also simplified the workflow a little bit. So then I have the kit, which is kind of the same thing. And all of that filters into, if you look at the outputs here, those are going to drums and drums parallel, which feeds these 2 guys and the output. So these are parallel to that. Same as the other channels. It's just more of it. And this, again, the same thing. It's going out to sum 1, going out to mix bus, going out to stem drums, and instrumental. So that's really it for the template. The template is, fairly simple. I'm not going to get into VCAs because I haven't been using my VCAs as much anymore now that we have folders. Again, that's a function, for me, that's a function of the surfaces, which I will go through in another video. Now, I told you I would show you my I/O setup. This, I would say, took about as much time as setting up the actual channels, because this is, this being organized is the key to keeping your brain organized. They're not random numbered buses. Everything is labeled. I do have some extra buses in there just so I have, in case I need to route stuff, I have stuff available. But for the most part, everything is already in here, set up, ready to go. So you'll see, like you saw in my drop-down folder, you have mix bus, rear bus, drums, parallel drums. I have buses for each category and a parallel for each category. And then I have effects buckets for each category. I can add more if I need them, but these are just kind of set up and ready to go. There's more for the vocals, obviously, because vocals have a tendency to get. I have some miscellaneous just for fun. Like I have a few other tracks in there that are hidden and inactive that just have some nice effects chains. I almost never use them. So I don't have them in the categories where I would normally use them. I just have them there. I can always grab it. I can throw it in, ready to go. So I have some buses here just for internal routing in case I have to trigger something or whatever. I have some buses that are ready to go. I have this thing called Dead Patch. This is when I want something to go nowhere. Why would I want something to go nowhere? There are times when I would like to, for example, send something to a reverb, but not to the stereo bus. I can send it to Dead Patch. It'll go nowhere, but the sends will still work. That's one example. When I'm doing mix minuses, having a dead patch is nice. It's kind of a utility bus. Now we get into my print buses. Mix, stems, acapella, instrumental. If I'm doing more of a post thing, I have one that has dialogue, music effects, etc. And then there's my monitor outputs. My alt monitor is where I can put somebody else's mix, where I can put the temporary mix and just kind of flip back and forth. And then there's my summing ups. I have 12 or 6 stereo pairs for 12 outputs that are being summed externally and coming back in. Then there's just my outputs, my Dante outputs, and my headphone mixes. And then I have this bus that's called End Template. And that's just a marker so that I know that everything below that is what came in with the file, what came in with the song that I'm mixing, and has nothing to do with my template. It's just, having these visual cues makes things so much easier. Like these little blank buses that I put in here, they're all different sizes because it won't let you name the same thing multiple times. So I just have them different lengths. But these are nice little dividers that keep everything nice and neat for me. And so that's it. It's not that crazy. It's not that different. The one question that I get is, isn't it hard to access your tracks once they're all packed away in a folder? Like you don't have everything kind of splayed out for yourself? No. The reason why is because I have the surface, and I'm able to, as soon as I grab one of those channels on the surface, it opens up, it spills into, and then I can see just the drums. It's great. I mean, it's really a great way to work. So then my 16 channels populate automatically with exactly what I want to be working on at that moment. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed this. Feel free to subscribe. I promise I won't inundate you with stupid listicles and other silly videos like that. I'm trying to keep it, lean and mean, and just kind of talk about the things that work for me without judging what works for you. Thanks very much.